9 signs you're secretly getting rich even if you don't feel it. Picture 2 Americans. One posts luxury vacation photos, drives a leased BMW, lives in a $500,000 mortgage, and looks incredibly successful on Instagram. The other drives a paid-off Toyota, lives in a modest apartment, rarely posts about money, and seems financially ordinary. What if I told you the Instagram star is drowning in debt while the Toyota driver is secretly building generational wealth using principles older than the Roman Empire? Here's the mind-blowing question that's going to change everything. Why do real millionaires often feel poor while broke people feel rich? The answer lies in 9 ancient signs of wealth building that are so subtle you're probably exhibiting them right now without realizing it. In this video, you're going to discover why your boring financial habits actually prove you're winning. You'll learn which invisible behaviors indicate hidden prosperity, why small, consistent actions create massive fortunes, and how ancient civilizations identified secretly wealthy people long before bank statements existed. By the end, you'll stop feeling inadequate about your financial progress and start recognizing the powerful wealth-building foundation you've already constructed. If you're ready to see your finances through ancient eyes instead of social media filters, comment "Secret Wealth" right now and hit that subscribe button. But here's what's going to shock you most. The very habits that make you feel poor are actually making you rich. 1. The scholar's daily discipline. Here's why most people stay financially ignorant their entire lives. They're waiting for the perfect moment to learn about money. They think they need weekend seminars, expensive courses, or months of free time to understand investing. Meanwhile, the quietly wealthy are building financial empires through a 20,500-year-old learning strategy that takes just 10 minutes a day. Let me tell you about 2 students who sought wisdom from the great philosopher Aristotle in ancient Athens. The first student, perfectionist Philippos, had grand plans for financial education. "Master," he announced, "I want to understand everything about money, commerce, and wealth building. But I need the perfect conditions first. Complete quiet, proper scrolls, at least 3 uninterrupted hours daily, and no distractions. When everything is ideal, I'll master all financial knowledge at once." Aristotle nodded thoughtfully and said, "Very ambitious, Philippos. Return when you find these perfect conditions." The second student, persistent Pythagoras, approached with humility. "Master, I work in the marketplace all day and can only spare 10 minutes each morning. Is that enough to learn about money?" Aristotle smiled broadly and replied, 10 focused minutes beats 10 distracted hours. Begin tomorrow." Here's what happened over the next year. Philippos kept waiting for his perfect learning environment. His job remained demanding, his home stayed noisy, and those mythical 3-hour blocks never materialized. 12 months later, he knew exactly as much about money as when he started. Nothing. Pythagoras, meanwhile, used his daily 10 minutes strategically. Monday, basic math and percentages. Tuesday, understanding interest and debt. Wednesday, simple investment concepts. Thursday, tax principles. Friday, business fundamentals. Each lesson was immediately tested in his marketplace work that same day. After 1 year, Pythagoras had accumulated over 60 hours of focused financial learning and practical application. More importantly, he'd applied 365 small lessons to real situations. His business negotiations improved, his investment decisions became smarter, and his income doubled because customers trusted his financial wisdom. The psychological breakthrough. Financial literacy compounds like investments. Each concept builds on previous knowledge, creating an exponential understanding curve. When you know the difference between good and bad debt, you avoid costly mistakes. When you understand compound interest, you start investing earlier. When you grasp tax strategies, you keep more of what you earn. Start your 10-minute daily practice tonight. Read 1 finance article during coffee, listen to 1 podcast segment during lunch, watch 1 educational video before bed. Then immediately apply 1 insight to your actual financial situation. Remember Aristotle's wisdom. Excellence is not an act, but a habit. Your financial fortune is being built through daily learning discipline, not perfect conditions. 2. The Fortress Builder's Preparation. Here's the nightmare scenario that keeps smart people broke. Your car needs a $2,000 repair tomorrow. Your water heater dies next week, and you get a surprise medical bill for $3,000 the following month. Can you handle all three without panic, debt, or choosing which disaster to ignore? If that question makes your stomach tighten, you're living exactly like the ancient cities that fell within days when crisis struck. Let me tell you about two neighboring cities in medieval times facing the same inevitable threat: siege warfare. The first city, prosperous Optimusburg, was ruled by leaders who believed good times would last forever. During years of abundant harvests and thriving trade, they consumed everything they produced. Why waste money storing grain when we have so much? The mayor reasoned. Let's expand our festivals, build magnificent fountains, and enjoy our prosperity. We'll worry about problems if they ever come. The city's treasury went toward beautiful but useless projects. Citizens lived lavishly, merchants spent every coin they earned, and no one prepared for darker days. Optimusburg looked wealthy and successful from the outside. The second city, prepared Fortress Town, was led by strategists who understood that abundance was temporary. During those same prosperous years, they mandated that 20% of all grain, water, and resources be stored in underground reserves. Citizens grumbled about the wasteful storage costs and paranoid leadership, but the preparations continued systematically. When enemy armies arrived and laid siege to both cities, the contrast was devastating. Optimusburg fell within 2 weeks. Without stored supplies, people began to starve immediately. Desperation led to chaos, surrender, and destruction. Their beautiful fountains couldn't feed hungry families. Fortress Town, however, not only survived the 18-month siege, but thrived afterward. While enemies waited outside, citizens remained healthy and productive. When the siege finally ended, Fortress Town emerged stronger and became the dominant regional power because it alone had prepared for the inevitable crisis. This exact pattern destroys modern American families every day. Recent studies show 57% of Americans can't cover a $1,000 emergency. That means more than half the country is one car repair, medical bill, or job loss away from financial catastrophe. The psychological difference between having an emergency fund and not having one transforms your entire relationship with money. Without a buffer, every unexpected expense becomes a crisis. With 3 to 6 months of expenses saved, these same situations become minor inconveniences. Start building your fortress reserves immediately. Even $25 weekly becomes $1,300 annually. When your first emergency hits and you handle it without stress, you'll understand why ancient fortress builders were the ones who survived and prospered. 3. The Freeman's Liberation. Here's the brutal truth about your financial future. Every monthly payment you make to creditors is a vote for someone else's wealth instead of your own. While you're stressed about car payments, credit card minimums, and student loans, you're voluntarily choosing financial slavery over freedom. This exact dynamic destroyed families 4,000 years ago in Babylon, and it's destroying American dreams today. Let me tell you about two men in ancient Babylon who faced identical opportunities but made opposite choices about debt. The first man, tempted trader Tammuz, was a skilled craftsman earning good money creating pottery. When the annual harvest festival arrived, Tammuz saw wealthy merchants celebrating with elaborate feasts, fine clothes, and expensive gifts. Wanting to live like the rich, Tammuz borrowed silver from moneylenders at high interest rates to fund his lifestyle upgrade. "I'll pay it back from future earnings," Tammuz reasoned. "I work hard and deserve to enjoy life now." The borrowed money bought him temporary status, beautiful robes, sumptuous meals, and admiration from neighbors who thought he'd struck it rich. But here's what happened next. Every pot Tammuz made, every hour he worked, the first portion belonged to his creditors. He wasn't creating wealth for himself anymore. He was generating profits for others while remaining poor. Years passed, and Tammuz remained trapped in debt slavery, working harder but never getting ahead. The second man, strategic merchant Nabu, earned similar income but approached debt completely differently. When festival temptations arose, Nabu reminded himself, "I am a free man, and free men don't mortgage their future for today's pleasures." Instead of borrowing for consumption, Nabu lived modestly and saved aggressively. When Nabu did borrow money, it was only to purchase better tools and materials that increased his pottery production and income. His debt served him. It wasn't his master, it was his tool for building wealth. 5 years later, the contrast was stark. Tammuz was still making monthly payments, stressed about money, working harder but staying broke. His beautiful festival clothes had long since worn out, but the debt payments continued. Nabu owned his workshop outright, had expanding business operations, and his entire income belonged to him. The liberation principle still works today. Debt for consumption makes you a slave, while debt elimination makes you free. Every dollar freed from debt payments becomes a dollar working for your wealth instead of someone else's profit margins. Use the avalanche method. List debts by interest rate and attack the highest rates first while making minimums on others. Every payment eliminated is income permanently returned to you. Remember Nabu's wisdom. True wealth begins when your money works for you, not when you work for your creditors. 4. The merchant's network. Here's why most people build wealth slowly, while others seem to stumble into amazing opportunities. They're trying to get rich in isolation instead of understanding that wealth is a team sport. Every millionaire you've ever met has one thing in common: they didn't build their fortune alone. They leveraged relationships, partnerships, and networks that opened doors invisible to solo operators. Let me tell you about 2 traders who lived along the ancient Silk Road 1,500 years ago. The first merchant, isolated trader Hakim, was hardworking and skilled at identifying valuable goods. He operated alone, trusted no one, and believed success came through individual effort. Hakim would travel short distances, buy silk from local producers, and sell to nearby markets. He made decent profits and felt proud of his self-reliance. But Hakim's world was small. He only knew merchants in his immediate region, had no information about distant markets, and missed major opportunities because he operated in a bubble. When competition increased or local demand shifted, Hakim struggled because he had nowhere else to turn. The second merchant, connected trader Yusuf, approached business completely differently. Instead of working alone, Yusuf invested time building relationships across the entire Silk Road network. He formed partnerships with traders in Constantinople, shared information with craftsmen in Persia, and collaborated with transporters across Central Asia. Yusuf didn't just buy and sell goods, he traded intelligence. When Persian traders told him about silk shortages in Rome, he'd coordinate with Chinese producers months in advance. When Byzantine merchants mentioned new luxury demands, Yusuf would connect them with specialized craftsmen who could fulfill those needs. Here's what happened over 10 years. Hakim remained a small-scale local trader, earning modest profits but missing the major opportunities that required broader connections and market intelligence. Meanwhile, Yusuf became one of the wealthiest merchants on the Silk Road, not because he worked harder, but because his network multiplied his opportunities exponentially. Yusuf's partnerships gave him early access to the best goods, insider information about market trends, and collaborative opportunities that no solo operator could match. When one trade route closed, his network provided alternatives. When one market declined, his connections opened others. This same principle builds modern wealth. High-value connections don't mean billionaires. They're people who share your ambition, expertise, or complementary skills. Maybe it's a mentor guiding your career, a colleague sharing investment insights, or an entrepreneur proposing partnerships. These relationships expose you to opportunities, ideas, and collaborations that accelerate wealth building. A single conversation with the right person can spark a business idea, introduce you to investors, or open doors you never knew existed. Start building your Silk Road network today. Attend industry events, join online communities, reach out to mentors, and engage with people who inspire your growth. 5. The Phoenicians' multiplication. Here's the mindset mistake that keeps good people poor forever. Waiting until you have enough money to start investing. You think you need thousands of dollars to begin building wealth, so you keep postponing while inflation quietly steals your purchasing power. Meanwhile, the secretly wealthy understand a 3,000-year-old principle that turns small amounts into generational fortunes through the magic of consistent reinvestment. Let me tell you about two men in ancient Phoenicia who earned similar profits from their olive groves, but chose completely different paths with their money. The first man, cautious farmer Hiram, worked hard tending his olive trees and earned decent profits each harvest season. At the end of every year, Hiram would convert his earnings into silver coins and carefully bury them in clay jars around his property. "Better safe than sorry," he'd tell his family. "At least I know my money is secure, and I'm not risking it on uncertain ventures." Year after year, Hiram would dig up his jars, count his coins, and feel satisfied seeing the exact same amount of silver. He believed he was being financially responsible by avoiding risk and keeping his wealth safe from market fluctuations and business failures. The second man, strategic merchant Shamash, earned identical profits from his olive groves, but approached money completely differently. Instead of burying his earnings, Shamash immediately reinvested every profit into expanding his trading operations. He'd buy shares in shipping expeditions to Egypt, partner with craftsmen to improve olive oil quality, and lend money to other merchants at reasonable interest rates. When neighbors called him reckless for gambling his money, Shamash would smile and say, "My money works harder than I do. Every coin I reinvest has children, and those children have children of their own." Here's what happened over 20 years. Hiram still had his buried silver coins, but bread now cost 3 times more than when he started. His safe money had actually lost significant purchasing power to inflation. Meanwhile, Shamash owned a maritime trading empire spanning the entire Mediterranean. His reinvested profits had compounded into extraordinary wealth that generated passive income far exceeding his original olive farm earnings. The multiplication secret that Shamash understood: consistency beats size every time. $100 invested monthly at 10% annual returns becomes $200,000 in 30 years. The same amount buried in jars becomes worthless over time. Don't wait for thousands. Start with whatever you have today. Open a brokerage account, buy broad market index funds, and set up automatic monthly contributions. Your first $25 investment is more valuable than a $1,000 investment 10 years from now. Remember Shamash's wisdom. Money that reproduces builds dynasties, while money that hibernates gets poorer. 6. The Roman engineers' systems. Here's why smart people sabotage their own wealth-building efforts. They rely on willpower and memory instead of systems and automation. Every month you forget to transfer money to savings. Every week you decide whether to invest. Every day you manually manage your finances. You're choosing the hard path that leads to inconsistent results and eventual failure. Let me tell you about two men in ancient Rome who solved the same problem, delivering fresh water to thousands of people, using completely opposite approaches. The first man, manual worker Marcus, was hired to supply water to a growing Roman neighborhood. Marcus was dedicated, strong, and reliable. Every morning before dawn, he'd walk 2 miles to the nearest spring, fill heavy clay vessels, and carry them back to distribute among households. He'd make this journey 8 to 10 times daily, 7 days a week. Marcus made good money because people desperately needed water, and he was the most dependable carrier in the region. He took pride in his physical strength and personal service. But Marcus had a fatal limitation. His water delivery system required his constant presence and effort. When Marcus got sick, people went thirsty. When he took a day off, the entire neighborhood suffered. His capacity was limited by his human endurance. The second man, engineer Lucius, looked at the same water challenge, but thought systematically instead of manually. Instead of carrying water daily, Lucius spent 6 months studying hydraulics, gathering materials, and building an aqueduct system that would deliver fresh water automatically 24 hours a day. For half a year, Lucius earned nothing while Marcus was making steady profits and calling him crazy for wasting time on impossible engineering dreams. But Lucius understood something profound. Temporary effort building the right system would create permanent, effortless results. When Lucius's aqueduct was completed, fresh water flowed continuously into the neighborhood without any daily effort from him. Residents paid monthly fees for unlimited access to clean water. Meanwhile, Marcus was still making his exhausting daily trips, earning the same amount as year one. 5 years later, Marcus was physically worn out from carrying thousands of water loads, and his income had plateaued. Lucius was traveling throughout the Roman Empire, building aqueducts for other cities, earning passive income from multiple water systems while never carrying another vessel. This exact principle separates financially successful people from those who struggle despite good intentions. Wealthy people build systems that work automatically. Automatic savings transfers, automatic investment contributions, automatic bill payments. Set up your financial aqueducts today. Automate transfers to savings, schedule recurring investments, and enable automatic bill payments. Your money will flow toward wealth while you sleep, just like Roman water flowed to citizens without daily labor. Remember Lucius's wisdom. Systems work when you're not working. 7. Why saying no to expenses builds true wealth. Here's the financial trap that destroys more wealth than market crashes, job losses, and bad investments combined: the inability to say no to unnecessary expenses. Every time you cave to social pressure, marketing manipulation, or impulse desires, you're choosing temporary pleasure over permanent prosperity. This weakness bankrupted Roman citizens 2,000 years ago, while philosophers built lasting fortunes through one simple skill: discernment. Let me tell you about 2 wealthy men in ancient Rome who had access to unlimited luxuries, but chose radically different paths. The first man, status-seeking Senator Flavius, earned substantial income from his political position and business investments. But Flavius had a fatal flaw. He couldn't resist any opportunity to display his wealth. When fellow senators bought golden chariots, Flavius immediately purchased one even more elaborate. When merchants threw expensive banquets, Flavius hosted twice as lavishly. When nobles commissioned marble statues, Flavius ordered 3. Flavius lived in constant anxiety about his image. Despite earning an excellent income, he was perpetually broke because every coin flowed toward impressing others. He borrowed money to maintain appearances, stressed about keeping up with Roman high society, and never accumulated real wealth because it all went toward status displays that provided no lasting value. The second man, philosopher Marcus Aurelius, had access to unlimited imperial wealth, but approached possessions through Stoic philosophy. Marcus practiced the discipline of examining every potential purchase against his core values. Does this serve my purpose? Will this matter in 10 years? Am I buying this for genuine need or empty vanity? When other emperors built golden palaces, Marcus chose functional simplicity. When nobles competed over luxury possessions, Marcus invested in infrastructure, education, and military strength. While others sought admiration through wealth displays, Marcus found contentment through self-mastery and meaningful contribution. Here's what happened. Flavius died financially ruined despite earning millions throughout his career because his wealth constantly flowed toward purchases that impressed strangers but provided no lasting benefit. Marcus built the greatest empire in history and left behind philosophical writings that still guide people 2,000 years later. The discernment principle that saved Marcus. Every expense is a choice between your future freedom and your present ego. When you say no to the overpriced concert, trendy gadget, or luxury vacation that doesn't align with your values, You're redirecting those resources toward investments that compound wealth. This doesn't mean living like a monk. It means spending intentionally on what truly matters while confidently declining everything else. Each no to unnecessary expenses is a yes to financial independence. Start practicing stoic discernment today. Before every purchase, ask, does this move me toward or away from my financial goals? Let your answer guide your wallet. Remember Marcus's wisdom. True wealth whispers while financial insecurity screams through expensive displays. 8. Why multiple income streams create stability. Here's the dangerous financial gamble 90% of Americans are making without realizing it, betting their entire economic future on a single paycheck from one employer. You think having a good job makes you financially secure, but you're actually more vulnerable than you know. One company restructuring, industry disruption, or economic downturn could eliminate your sole income source overnight, leaving you with zero alternatives. Let me tell you about two administrators in ancient Egypt who managed water resources for their regions during the unpredictable flooding seasons of the Nile River. The first administrator, single-source Amenhotep, was responsible for a prosperous farming district that depended entirely on one major tributary of the Nile. This single waterway was substantial and reliable, providing abundant irrigation for crops year after year. Amenhotep felt confident and secure because his region's water supply seemed endless and dependable. Amenhotep's farmers prospered during good seasons, and the administrator took pride in managing such a productive area. He saw no need to develop alternative water sources or diversify his region's irrigation system. Why complicate things when we have such an excellent main channel? He'd tell visiting officials. The second administrator, multi-stream Khemwaset, managed a region that drew water from 7 smaller tributaries flowing into the Nile. None of these individual streams was as large as Amenhotep's single source, but together they provided substantial water for irrigation. Khemwaset had spent years developing this network, connecting channels and maintaining multiple water pathways. When severe drought struck Egypt, the contrast became devastating. Amenhotep's single tributary dried up almost completely, leaving his entire region without irrigation. Crops failed, farmers went bankrupt, and the administrator was removed from his position for failing to protect his district. Khemwaset's region, however, remained productive throughout the drought. While 3 of his smaller tributaries dried up, 4 others continued flowing. His diversified water network meant that when some sources failed, others compensated. His farmers survived the crisis, and his reputation grew as a wise administrator who had prepared for the unexpected. This exact principle determines your financial survival today. When you depend solely on one employer for 100% of your income, you're like Amenhotep's region, prosperous but dangerously vulnerable. The moment that the single source disappears, your entire financial ecosystem collapses. But when you develop multiple income streams, side business, freelance work, investment dividends, rental income, royalties, you create Khemwaset's diversified system. Even small streams add up. $200 monthly from freelancing, $150 from investments, $300 from a side business creates $650 in additional monthly security. Start building your tributary system today. Identify one skill you could monetize outside your job, explore one investment that generates passive income, or develop one small business idea. Remember Khemwaset's wisdom: rivers with multiple sources never run completely dry. 9. Why living below means creates hidden prosperity. Here's the wealth-destroying disease that infects every successful person: lifestyle inflation. The moment your income increases, you immediately upgrade your living standards to match. New salary means new car. Promotion means a bigger apartment. Bonus means an expensive vacation. You think you're enjoying success, but you're actually guaranteeing you'll never build real wealth, because every extra dollar gets consumed by an upgraded lifestyle. Let me tell you about 2 wealthy nobles in ancient Persia who earned identical incomes but chose completely different approaches to displaying their prosperity. The first noble, extravagant Prince Darius inherited substantial wealth and earned an impressive income from his landholdings. But Darius believed that wealth should be visible to everyone. He built the most elaborate palace in his province, filled with golden decorations, rare marble, and expensive tapestries. He hosted lavish feasts weekly, wore different silk robes daily, and maintained a stable of exotic horses. Darius felt proud when visitors marveled at his displays of wealth. A successful man should look successful, he'd declare while commissioning another expensive addition to his palace. Every coin he earned immediately flowed toward maintaining and expanding his luxurious lifestyle. Darius looked incredibly wealthy to everyone who saw him. The second noble, modest Lord Cyrus, inherited similar wealth and earned comparable income, but approached prosperity through ancient Persian wisdom. True nobility is demonstrated through restraint, not excess. Cyrus lived in a beautiful but modest home, wore quality but simple clothing, and entertained guests with excellent food but reasonable portions. Most importantly, Cyrus saved and invested the massive difference between his income and his intentionally modest expenses. While Darius spent everything on appearance, Cyrus funneled surplus income into expanding his land holdings, lending money at interest, and financing profitable trade expeditions. 20 years later, the contrast was shocking. Darius had maintained his impressive lifestyle, but owned nothing beyond his expensive possessions. When political changes reduced his income, Darius couldn't downsize his lifestyle without losing face, so he borrowed money to maintain appearances. Eventually, he lost everything trying to sustain an unsustainable image. Cyrus, meanwhile, had quietly become one of the wealthiest men in the Persian Empire. His modest lifestyle had enabled massive wealth accumulation that generated enough passive income to fund any lifestyle he desired. But by then, Cyrus understood that true security came from financial independence, not expensive displays. This Persian principle still builds wealth today. Every dollar not spent on lifestyle inflation is a dollar available for wealth-building investments. When your income rises, resist the temptation to immediately upgrade everything. Instead, maintain your current lifestyle and invest the difference. Your goal isn't to look wealthy, it's to become wealthy. The two are often mutually exclusive. Remember Cyrus's wisdom. The wealthy whisper while the broke scream through expensive possessions. Look, here's the bottom line. Greek scholars learned daily. Egyptian fortress builders prepared for siege. Babylonian merchants chose freedom over debt. Silk Road traders built networks. Phoenician investors multiplied consistently. Roman engineers automated systems. Stoic philosophers practiced discernment. Egyptian administrators diversified water sources, and Persian nobles lived modestly despite wealth. These aren't just ancient stories. They're your wealth-building blueprint. Suppose you're learning about money, building emergency funds, controlling debt, expanding networks, investing consistently, automating finances, saying no to unnecessary expenses, diversifying income, or living below your means. In that case, you're secretly getting richer than you realize. Stop comparing yourself to social media millionaires. True wealth builds quietly through principles that have worked for 5,000 years. Which of these 9 signs surprised you most about your hidden wealth building? Drop it in the comments. Learning, emergency fund, debt control, networking, investing, automation, saying no, multiple income, or living below means. If this opened your eyes to your secret prosperity, smash that subscribe button and notification bell for more ancient wisdom that builds modern wealth. Remember, your ancestors knew that still waters run deep. You're building wealth whether you feel it or not.